The problem with the income tax, the fourth tier, is about 40% of that gets borne by small businesses. Now, job creation comes from small businesses, particularly in the startup phase, before they ever get incorporated. Small businesses are in fact going to have are going to be paying individual income tax because they're sole proprietorships, they're S corps, they're limited liability partnerships, which all provide their income which is declared by the business owner on their individual income tax form. So if you tax that individual a higher rate, that's in essence a tax on the small business. But Sue, even more than a small business, you know what creates the most jobs? Is a new business. A new business creates a lot of jobs. In fact, there's studies that say most small businesses create the majority of their jobs in the first year. It just makes sense. The small business gets started, you've got to get yourself up to the amount of staff you need to get ready to go. So it makes sense that new businesses would do that. Now think about this for a moment. We're looking at a time where in Washington they're talking about having the top tax rate go back to a rate of 44%. Senator Dayton and my opponent are contemplating raising the tax rate on high incomes, which is just $150,000 in their mind, which would just be like, if myself and my wife was also a professor at St. Cloud State, we'd be high income, it turns out. We're talking about taxing that at another 11%, or 10.95. He wanted to make sure you didn't get quite to 11%. So if you take that 44, that 10.95, that means that the government will be entitled on the last dollar you earn to 55 cents, making government in essence a majority partner in your new idea and in your new business. I don't believe that's what we ever had in mind in America, and it's a different image of America than I think voters in Minnesota would support.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. That just makes me so mad. What about the corporate income tax?
I think the corporate income tax has been an issue. It's very high in this state. In fact, we face the second highest corporate income tax in the world in this state. And it's harming corporations really badly. At a time like this, it's going to be really hard to zero it out right away. I think that needs to be a goal, but I don't think you can go there right away. But what I've said is I'd be willing to support a reduction in the rate immediately. There was some research done by a professor at the University of Tampa, who was also a graduate of my university where I went to graduate school in Claremont, and his research indicated that it started to be counterproductive at a rate above 7.5%. And so I'm proposing a cut right now from 9.6 to 7.5%. I believe the loss of income to the budget would be minimal, and I think an increase, a 2% cut in the marginal rate to corporations would spur research and development, additional investment, and would help create jobs.
Excellent. Are you a fan of Job Z?
No, I'm not. I really don't like Job Z at all.
I hate it.
Do you? Well, it's good.
I hate it.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting because this is a point where a lot of people think that Republicans are for Job Z because the current administration likes Job Z. I don't believe it really does what we want to do. It really leads to a lot of business relocation rather than location. It's been helpful in the St. Cloud area in a couple of places, like Arctic Cat, which is in our district, or it's in our Senate district. It's not in my House district, but it's in our area. It's been helpful for a couple other places, but more often than not, Job Z gets used for business relocation. It makes planning for the city budget and the county budget a little more difficult. I found that Job Z has been, by and large, leading to businesses making decisions for something other than the real reason, which is I want to produce a new product, I want to increase the amount of goods and services in the economy, I want to create jobs, and I want to make a good living for myself too while I'm at it. And I think it's getting in the way of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How about local government aid?
Local government aid is something that comes in two categories, and I think this is always a confusing topic for people, both for cities and for counties. For city governments, they get two kinds of aid. One for equalization. A small town which needs to have like a police car, let's say, doesn't have the tax base to create enough revenue to pay for a police car. That's equalization aid. That's not so bad. Okay, then there's the other kind of aid, which is categorical, and it's meant to fund mandates that the state puts on to cities and counties. This is always very difficult because the mandates come, and initially they give you the money for it, but later on, when the budget gets a little tight, where's one of the first places they look? They look at LGA, and they start to cut your aid. Okay, and what happens is they don't take away the mandate. So while they're taking away the aid, they're not taking away the mandate. You're losing the amount that you have for equalization. It was also meant at one point to be like a hand up for places like St. Cloud, not so much St. Cloud, but think of smaller communities even than St. Cloud. A hand up for these places to be able to provide basic public services, fire, police, the jail, the kinds of things that anybody from libertarian to liberal would believe is part of the proper function of government. And it made it a little easier for that. That's not what's happening now. Most of the money is coming to three major cities, which probably don't have a major problem in terms of raising taxes on their own: Duluth, Minneapolis, and St. Paul. And so it's places like St. Cloud that are getting hurt by this. So while we talk about local government aid and we think, oh God, and people are pointing at it in our race, people are pointing at it and saying, you need not to cut local government aid. What I really want to do is to go back and talk about it this way. Let's look at the mandates that the cities and the counties are being required to do, and let's tell each and every one of them, look at each and every one of them and say, if we've taken money away from you, let's remove a mandate that's equal to the amount of money that we've had to pull. So I can't promise. I make very few promises in this race. Okay, in fact, the only one I've made so far is no new taxes. but and so when people say you should promise not to cut LGA, I say I won't promise that, but I'll promise you this: if we have to cut LGA, we're going to pull the mandate that gives you the equal amount, so that you have the freedom to use what LGA you do get in the way that's best for your community.
Awesome. And I could talk economics with you for hours and hours and hours, but we're trying to keep this narrow to a half hour
Okay.
for everybody to watch. So I want to talk about education for just a little bit. I want to spend a little bit of time on K-12. I want to spend a little bit of time on higher ed. You're in higher ed. You get that part. And then I want to hear your opinion on pre-K. So let's start with K through 12 first. 40% of the budget.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Keep funding it? Keep throwing money down a black hole? Give it more money? What are we going to do?
I believe we made a mistake in the last legislative session in saying K-12 was simply off the table. It's too big a piece. It needs to be subject to the same amount of scrutiny every other department and agency and budgetary function are. So it would be subject to zero-based budgeting just like everything else, and therefore it would be exposed to the possibility of cuts. I think what people want is they want to have good schools and again, they want the accountability. There are very few things I like about No Child Left Behind. One of the few things I did like was actually having a consistent set of data that we could look at and say, this is how our school is doing compared to other schools. Imperfect measures, but at least they're comparable. And so what we want is we want to have some accountability, and I'm actually emphasizing in my race accountability for administrators, because often it's the administrators that are part of a major part of the problem in terms of how the school performs, rather than the teachers. I don't want the onus to only be on teachers. I want that to be a shared responsibility between teachers and principals and other administrators, and then asking parents to step up too. And I really want to tell people listening to this, if you want me to go and take a hard look at K-12, you as a parent have to participate in your child's education. That's tremendously important. When it comes to higher ed, okay, my issues are simply that when I get students in my schools, a lot of them need remedial math, a lot of them need remedial English. It's costing us money. We need to go back and talk to, particularly to the high school teachers, and say, we need our students to be really prepared in terms of when they come to the university, that they're not having to spend money to get again the material that they should have learned back in high school. That has been a major problem for us. It provides some money, I guess, for the university. We collect a little tuition revenue for that, but it's also being funded in part by the taxpayer, and it means they're paying twice for the same thing, and I don't think that's right either.
That happened to one of my daughters.
Oh, really?
She went off to college, and they said, "Oh, guess what? You need remedial math." I'm like, "What's up with this?" And parents are floored when it happens to their kids. Why aren't we teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, getting them ready to go to college?
Because you've got so many other standards that you're having put in place, and there's lots of requirements on social studies. There's lots of requirements in sciences. The languages people want something. The arts people want something. I think we need to focus on buying a good education for our students, which prepares them for college. Because right now, without the college degree, the amount of jobs that you can get with only a high school diploma is so much less, and your future options are just so much less. We need them to be prepared. And we need to prepare them for lifelong learning too, because more and more people are having to change jobs 2, 3, 4, 5 times in their career, and they need to be able to know how to go back to school in their 30s and 40s and their 50s and in their 60s to find another line of work when the work they were in no longer is there, when someone has, as the old management book goes, move their cheese to someplace else.
And the short version of what do you think of pre-K funding? Last year they wanted a brand spanking new Office of Early Education created.
You know, a lot of people bring this up to me, and because I'm an economist, and the biggest champion for this is Art Rolnick, the former senior vice president for economic research at the Fed in Minneapolis. I really like Art. I like what he's done. Some of the research on this has been good, but they're small scale, and even Rolnick himself will say we're not positive about how it scales up to a broader level. We're using small experimental pieces to try to make something bigger out of it. I think it needs more study. I'd like to see a whole school district try it, and I'd like to see some grant given them to do that. I'd be willing to look at that to see if it works, but I'm not positive it works yet, so I don't think we ought to do something that spreads across the entire state. Yeah,
I'm not positive it works yet either, and I don't want to give the teachers' unions any more members by expanding it to pre-K.
Well, I'm still going to say I'm willing to look at it because there is some evidence on it that I think we should look at further.
Okay, we're down to our last 2 minutes now, so I want you to look straight into the camera and tell the people watching, why should they vote for you? Why should they trust you? Why do you want them? Why should they send you to St. Paul?
The reason you should listen to me and trust me is this. I'm, first of all, a first-time politician. I'm not even sure why I decided to get into this, other than frustration. I was tired of seeing what was going on down there. I have training and experience in matters such as budgeting. I've taught public finance. I think I understand taxes pretty well. I still have more to learn, and I'm learning more of it as I go along every day. But I think you need to trust me that I'm going to do my best, and that you need to trust me that this is not a career for me. What I want to do is to go down, do a job. I want to fix the budget. I want to make sure we hold the line on taxes. I want to make sure we have an economy that grows jobs so that my children can live well and that your children can live well in a Minnesota that I adopted 26 years ago as my home and that I never ever want to leave. I love this place. You love this place too. We can make it better by working together to make this into a Minnesota that has opportunities for our children, has growth for our economy, has good schools, has good universities, has opportunities for people to grow throughout their life and to realize the potential that's in each and every one of us. And the way to realize that is to make sure that you, the citizen, are the majority holder of your future and not government. It's to allow you to be able to read the books and read the materials that you need to know in order to get to the place you want to be in your life, be it here in Minnesota, or if you decide you want to go someplace warmer later on, I want you to have that opportunity too. I want that for you, I want that for me, I want that for my family and my children and their children and their children's children going down the road from here to as far as God allows this state to continue. I thank you. I'm asking you for your vote on November 2nd. My name's King Banaian. I'm running for House District 15B.
And that's how you know you have a really smart person in front of you. Did you hear him say he still has a lot to learn? That's how you know you're dealing with a really smart person. You're going to win.
Thank you,
I can't
Sue.
wait to be at your swearing-in ceremony in January to be the next member of the House of Representatives.
It'll be really good to see you there.
Best of luck.
Thank you.